All right, I can see it um, as the background, like whole presentation. There you go.
Okay,
Perfect.
all right. Well, hi everyone. I'm Mel. And I'm the food program manager for the state of Tennessee Department of Health and in for the environmental health program. And I'll talk about farmers market food unit permits and then also sampling at the farmers markets. Um, First tell you about what is a food service establishment in our law, the types of food service establishments that we used to see, and then now this new type, the farmers market food unit permit, and then I'll go into what requires a permit and what does not require a permit. So in our law under, Title 68, Chapter 14, Part 7, oh 03, this is the definition of food service establishment. Any establishment, place, or location, whether permanent, temporary, seasonal, or internet, where food is prepared and the public is offered to be served or is served food. Food is including but not limited to foods, beverages, and vegetables that are not in the original container or package. Foods and beverages dispensed at soda fountains and delicatessens, sliced watermelons, ice balls, or water mixtures. And these food establishments include places that or includes places where there is no charge for a food or where there's no charge for food. Sorry, I'm all over my words. It's hard to read that definition. But what this means is any place or location where food and or beverage is taken out of the original container, prepared and served to the public, regardless whether there is a charge for the food or beverages, meets our definition and requires a food service permit to serve food. Um, and there's and the typical types of operations you'll see at a farmer's market are ones that meet that meet the definition that I just went over and require a food permit, and that's preparing food and beverages on site and served to customers. What does not require a permit is the sale of whole, uncut fruits and vegetables, sales of foods that are produced in an owner's private residence under the Food Freedom Act, and I'll get into that a little bit more later, and then providing samples of the items listed above. So historically, there's really only two ways you could serve food at a farmer's market. And this picture was taken at the Nashville Farmers Market. And the first way was you had to own a full brick and mortar, purpose-built permanent food service establishment. You had to have a real restaurant in four walls, roof, and everything, in order to serve food. The other way was you had to also incur the expense to have your own food truck or food cart. And this left a lot of people wanting to serve food at a farmer's market who couldn't burden the cost of uh, owning a food truck or food cart. And then that is when the 2023 Farmers Market Food Unit Bill was introduced and passed into law. And in that, it defines what a farmer's market is and what a farmer's market food unit is. And this new type of permit, it allows you to serve food with and obtain a food service permit from the health department. And this went live January 1st, 2024, and there's 89 of these currently in across the state. And what this permit allows you to do is obtain a permit without having to have a food truck, a food cart, or a brick and mortar food establishment. And I'll go into the requirements of this in a minute. Okay. And so this bill, it defines what a farmer's market is and a farmer's market food unit permit. This also added provision that exempts sampling from regulation. And this allows a food unit permit to be permitted by using improvised equipment. That's the big difference between the permanent food service establishments and food trucks and food carts and a farmer's market food unit permit is the allowing the use of improvised equipment. Um, Farmers market feed unit permits are required. So you, if you plan on operating multiple farmers market food unit permits at different events, or if you're operating at the same time, each tent would need its own separate permit. And these farmers market food unit permits are only applicable for their use at a farmer's market. And a copy of the farmer's market food unit permit and your most recent inspection have to be posted when you're in operation. And local governments may not have more stringent requirements. And the annual fee for this permit is $300 a year. Okay, that was a lot of words. So, um, like I said, to operate a farmer's market food unit permit, you have to abide by the food service establishment rules that all restaurants, all food trucks, and all food carts abide by. Really, the only differences is being allowed to use improvised equipment. So in chapter two, it talks about personal health and hygiene. The person in charge has to be knowledgeable about their food safety, of their food safety operation. So they have to be knowledgeable of what temperatures they're holding the food at, be responsible for employee illness and health, responsible for knowing when to wash hands and make sure that hand sinks are properly stocked and supplied. Um, Food always has to be from an approved source, just like all restaurants across the state. And one thing I want to point out is that foods from an unlicensed home kitchen are prohibited to supply a farmers market food unit permit. So foods that are produced under the Food Freedom Act cannot be used as an ingredient and served out of the farmers market food unit permit. And then I'm sure I'll get questions on that later, but we can get into that later. Warewashing, like I said, it's the same as every restaurant and food truck across the state. It's just you're allowed to use improvised equipment. And the improvised equipment must be available on site when the farmer's market food unit permit is operational. And I'll go over examples of what this improvised equipment looks like. Um, And one of the other big differences is if a priority violation is noted on your inspection at a farmer's market food unit permit, it has to be corrected as soon as possible and within 24 hours. That's really the big differences, is improvised equipment and then violations must be corrected within 24 hours. Okay. So the minimum acceptable improvised equipment. So for hand washing, the minimum is a cooler with a spigot with a minimum 5 gallon water capacity, hand soap and paper towels with a separate 5 gallon empty bucket that is used to collect the dirty hand washing water below. And I have a picture to illustrate that. Food preparation and protection, at a minimum, you have to make sure that you have enough equipment on hand um, to handle your food to prevent bare hand contact with food. So if you drop tongs, make sure you have extra tongs, extra gloves, serving utensils, because you cannot touch ready to eat food with your bare hands. Um, Food that's in storage or on display, it has to be covered and you got to make sure that food is protected. If food's going to be displayed, a box fan or an oscillating fan are going to be necessary to make sure that bugs and whatnot don't fall into your food or get onto the food. And you also have to have the adequate means to keep your cold food cold and your hot food hot. So depending on how you're serving, that could be ice in a cooler, that could mean uh, a steam table. I'm not sure. It really all depends on your operation, but you have to provide proof to us that you have adequate means to do so. Warewashing is going to be improvised equipment as well, and what this means is you need at least 3 containers that are large enough to submerge the largest equipment and utensils that you use in your stand, and you have to wash them, rinse them, and sanitize them. So the first compartment will be soapy water, next one will be just regular water and then an approved sanitizer for the third. And you also have to have sanitizer test strips to ensure that your concentration is correct. Okay, so this is an example of an improvised hand washing station. So you can see the hand washing clean water on top in the blue jug. You just turn the spigot, apply soap, wash your hands. Um, in that little white tote in the drawer, that's where the paper towels is at. Dry your hands off, turn the faucet off, and that's what an improvised hand washing station looks like. And I want to say that the use of hand sanitizer is not an acceptable substitute for hand washing. So you have to wash your hands. For ware washing, just like I said, you got to have three separate totes. Soapy water for washing, clean for rinsing, and third for sanitizing. And we're looking for if you're using a unscented, non-splashless, regular bleach uh, chlorine, the sanitizer parts per million needs to be between 25 and 100 parts per million. If you're going to be using other sanitizers like quaternary ammonia, it has to be mixed according to the manufacturer's specifications on the label. And you will be required to have test strips for checking the labels and during inspections, we will ask you to test the solution and then interpret the results. And then the contents, so the water that is going to be maintained in these totes, they just have to be switched out every so often to maintain that they're not becoming turbid or the solution is falling out of spec. Okay. Are there any questions so far? I can't see the chat, so Liz, if there's a question in the chat, let me know.
So far, I'm not seeing any.
Okay, very good. So what is the process for getting a farmer's market food unit permit? Um, First is to complete a survey that we have online at our website, and this is the direct link, but it is on, if you Google the state of Tennessee Department of Health, Environmental Health, this survey will be one of the links you'll find there. Once an application is submitted, the inspector in the county of where the applicant's residence lives, they will review the application and then touch base with you if more information is needed. Um, once it's been once the application has been reviewed and it's been determined that you meet the minimum requirements, the inspector will schedule an inspection at the health department nearest to you for an on-site inspection. And during that inspection, um, the inspector will verify that the applicant has the necessary improvised equipment that I discussed earlier, the minimum improvised equipment. And then once it's been determined that you have the minimum equipment, an invoice will be created for you. You'll pay that on site, and then we'll issue a permit right then and there. And this permit must be posted and available to the public when you are operating. And then once you're inspected, your inspection sheet has to be posted for the public to view it as well. The permit to operate, it expires at the end of June each year, the same cycle as all the other restaurants in the state. Um, Operator will receive a renewal by the end of May, and permits must be renewed by July 1st each year to continue operating the unit. So the permit fee is $300, and that permit year runs from July 1st to June 30th. Um, like I said, the renewals will be sent out mid-May for the following year. And then applicants that are interested in obtaining a permit between January and June, you will pay a prorated permit fee of $150. And then that permit expires June 30th. So you'll have to pay the full 300 on July 1st. Okay. And then what will the inspection process look like? At least twice a year, inspectors will visit each farmers markets and they will conduct unannounced inspections of the permitted food service establishments, including these farmers market food unit permits that are in operation. And then during this inspection, the EHS will verify that you have all the improvised equipment that is necessary to operate, so hand washing and ware washing. They'll also ensure that you are holding your foods at the right temperatures. There's no cross contamination. The things are being hygienically run, and then serving, and then the foods, and then basically you're following the food service establishment rules and laws. After the inspection, uh, after the inspection is completed, you'll be given a report, and on that report, it'll denote any violations observed, and then what corrective action has been taken place to obtain compliance. The most recent inspection and the permit have to be posted when you are operating, and it has to be conspicuously posted for anyone to review. And then that's pretty much the end of farmers market food unit permits. And now I'm going to kind of shift gears to go into what does not require a permit. Are there any questions about the farmers market food unit permits?
Mel, there are a couple questions
Okay.
in the chat. I can read them out to you if that
Yeah,
works.
if you would.
Um, is there a minimum contact time required for chlorine sanitizing at 25 parts per million?
Yeah, that should be, I believe, I think it's 10 seconds, I think is what it is.
And the next question says, I've been told that if a food has icing that contains milk, it cannot be sold because it needs to be kept cold. What if someone wants to sell an item like cheesecake? Can that be sold?
So you wanted to sell cheesecake from a farmer's market food unit permit? As long as the cheesecake is obtained from an approved source, you can serve cheesecake from a farmer's market food unit permit. You just have to maintain it in temperature
Okay.
and just
And
ensure
that's
this.
all the question.
Okay. Yeah, the main thing is going to be the source of food.
All right.
Um, all right. Well, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to chime in. I don't mind answering. Um, so what does not require a permit? It'll be the sale of whole uncut fruits and vegetables. This just does not meet the definition of foods that have been prepared and served. Foods that are produced and sold in compliance with the Food Freedom Act, and then sampling. And I think I have a slide that goes a little bit more into sampling. Um, Yeah, I guess this one just reaffirms that uncut fruits and vegetables do not meet the definition of food service. You can just, no permit needed. Now, foods that are produced under the Food Freedom Act, these are exempt from permitting inspection are non-TCS items and then some limited TCS items that were recently updated. I believe that's dairy and poultry. Um, Produced in a private residence. So FFA items are produced in a private residence and sold only within the state, and they're labeled with the producer's name, home address, and phone number, common name of the food, ingredients in descending order of predominance by weight. And then the required disclaimer, this product was produced at a private residence and then is exempt from state licensing and inspections. This product may contain allergens. There's more information that can be found on TDA's website about the Food Freedom Act, but there's no permit needed to produce that. Um, Foods that are produced under the Food Freedom Act may be sold directly by the producer to the consumer, whether in person or remotely, um, and then or by the agent of the producer or a third-party vendor, such as a retail shop or grocery store, to the consumer. And I want to reiterate that foods that are produced under the Food Freedom Act may not be used as an ingredient or be served an establishment permitted by the Department of Health that meets the definition of a food service establishment. Um, okay. And then sampling. So this was put into the farmers market food unit bill. So sampling foods at the farmers market do not require a permit, provided the samples are prepared on clean surfaces, foods are in good condition, sound or in good sound condition, free from spoilage, filth, or other contamination. Food must be honestly presented and safe for human consumption. Cut produce shall be discarded after 2 hours. Persons preparing or dispensing samples must wash their hands frequently or have and use disposable gloves. A barrier must be maintained between hands and food, such as gloves, tongs, toothpicks, and napkins. Or and then sneeze guards or plastic or glass coverings are required to protect open food products from contamination such as insects, dirt, and customers. All right, that was a lot of words, but yeah, any questions so far?
We have got one question that someone has raised their hand,
Okay.
and I am going to allow them to speak. Just a second. Okay. Okay. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, when it says number four, cut produce must be discarded after 2 hours, most farmers markets are longer than 2 hours. And so, for example, if you have lettuce that is cut at the base, or if you have a mixed lettuce, how would you handle that then? Usually I have a cooler, I have them on ice, but this just brings up a concern for me that I'm asking.
Yeah, my suggestion is just cut what you just as you need it, as you go, or I mean, lettuce really isn't a TCS product after the agricultural product, after the actual agricultural cut. But I would just cut whole produce as you need it, just reset it every couple hours.
Mhm. Okay.
But yeah, we don't really have any authority in the sampling aspect.
Okay. Thank you for that question. There's one more, Mel, before you move
Okay.
on. Um, this sampling exemption requires food to be made by a licensed or permitted vendor. What if the vendor is operating under TFFA?
Yeah, it says a vendor is not required to obtain a license or permit to offer samples. So if you're just giving a sample of your FFA product, that shouldn't fall in here.
Okay. So if they are operating under the Tennessee Food Freedom Act, they are still able to provide samples at the farmers market, given
That's
they
right.
follow all of those requirements.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Hmm.
perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
That's all the open questions we have right now.
Okay. Well, that was pretty good. And really, I was just gonna kind of wrap it up. I mean, my presentation was kind of short and sweet for this topic, but I wanted to reiterate, based on that last question, that sampling conducted at the farmers market food unit permit does not require a permit. Um, the sale and package of unpackaged non-TCS foods under the um, Food Freedom Act, there's no permit needed there. Food prepared on site at a farmer's market using improvised equipment requires a farmer's market food unit permit. Um, well, I guess I didn't really amend the middle one, but so foods that are TCS foods that are prepared in a private residence and bring it to the farmer's market to sell, that's not allowed except for the amendments that were made to the farm to the Food and Free uh gosh, I can't say it. The Food Freedom Act. There was amendment made to allow, I believe, dairy and some poultry products. That would be the only exemption to that. Um, and then to prepare TCS foods in a permitted food service establishment and bring it to the farmer's market to sell. That really kind of depends on how it's set up and how you're gonna do the food preparation. So you're gonna need it's just advised for you to call your local health department to determine whether or not you need a food service permit if you plan on selling TCS food at the farmer's market. All right. Are there any questions on the summary slide? I hope I didn't cause more confusion. I didn't edit the slide from the last time.
We've got another question. Can farm to table experiences conducted on a farm as part of an agritourism activity on a private residence serve produce raised on that farm?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Absolutely. Can farm to table experiences conducted on farm as part of an agritourism activity on a private residence serve produce raised on the farm?
Is it offered to the public? I mean, can the public join that
I
tourism?
believe so.
I would
Yes.
say that will meet the definition of food service
Hmm.
and would require a permit.
Okay. Um, and are there any restrictions with well water?
Yes, it will have to, if you're not, if it's on a non-community water supply, yeah, it'll have to meet the state water quality standards. And I would advise you if you're going to be serving at least 25 people a day for at least 60 days of the year, you'll have to get your water temp sampled by a T-Deck.
Next one. It seems the new TFFA allows many TCS foods since 2025, but it doesn't specify whether the TCS foods are intended to be consumed on site or taken home for consumption later. Does it matter whether the purchaser consumes the food at the market or takes it home?
This is food produced by FFA or
Yes.
yeah, I mean that's kind of up to whoever, you know. I mean, it's FFA, it's kind of exempt from permitting and inspection. That I think you can take it home, you could eat it there.
So my follow-up question for that note is if you are um, producing food under the Tennessee Food Freedom Act to be sold out of market, are you able to sell it for immediate on-site consumption or not? Because I think that's a question we get really often.
I mean, so if you handed me a cup of like, I'm trying to think how to, I guess I'd probably have to look at this at a case by case basis, to be honest with you.
Okay,
Yeah. I hate to give a general answer for that topic.
that makes perfect sense. Got another question. We produce the hazardous food under a TDA permit. Can we serve that food? I.e., if we smoke a brat under a TDA permitted facility, so I'm guessing the brat was processed, they got it processed from a TDA permitted facility. Can we sell it at the farmer's market as long as we also have the self-service permit.
If you smoked abroad at a TDA facility that's off-site and then brought it to the farmer's market to sell it, I mean, we would view that as a TDA facility is an approved source for food. So you could certainly obtain a farmer's market food unit permit to serve that.
Okay, great. That is all the questions we have right now.
Okay.
So thank you, Mo.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, if you have any questions after the call, you can certainly shoot that to that email. I can also put my email in the chat. I'll have to get out of the screen once I figure out how to.
And I will share my screen again. It has a um, evaluation and attendance form for us. So if you have any feedback for our session today or would like to be this session to be counted for attendance for the TAEP educational credit, go ahead and fill that out. We got a lot of questions today also pertaining to the Tennessee Food Freedom Act. And we did have a session on that last week that has not yet been uploaded to YouTube. Sorry on that. We've been out of the office. It's kind of been a crazy week, but it will be uploaded to YouTube as well as this session will also be uploaded. Um, and yes, absolutely, I will for sure post that attendance link in the chat. And for now, Mel, are you able to see the Q&A box?
I thought I don't know, maybe not. Maybe not. I see the direct message you sent me earlier, but I'm failing to see the general chat.
All right. Just 2 seconds to get that other link, and will address these questions. Here is the link for the evaluation in the chat. Um, and if you are unable to make a session, this will also be eligible. If you watch it on YouTube, you can still get the credit. Okay.
Oh, there's the Q&A. I see it now. Okay, so for children under still apply. Yeah, so for children, that still applies. That's still applicable code. You can serve food as long as the kids are the ones that are for doing safe handling for, bakery type goods, soft drinks, lemonades, and so forth. Yeah, that's fine. You can do that under that exemption.
This is an excellent question. If someone operates under 3 different county markets, do they need 3 separate farmers market food unit permits?
Or if you're operating them simultaneously, yes. Like if there's three markets happening on the same Saturday, then yes. If it's just you want to operate in Williamson, Davidson, and Rutherford County, all on a different Saturday, no, you can use the same permit.
Yes.
And
And,
Mhm.
or you, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was gonna say I was reading what Dr. Morgan wrote, and I completely agree with what he wrote.
Dr. Morgan said a cupcake, cookie, or ice cream made in a private residence would be a good example of a product that may be consumed on site. It seems that the Tennessee Food Freedom Act does not limit that.
I'm not sure what county permit you're referring to, but if you obtain a farmers market food unit permit, that permit is it's recognized statewide. So that should be the only one you need.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Mel. I really, really appreciate this. This is something we get questions on all the time, so we really appreciate your help in this.
Yeah, of course, I'm happy to do it. I know I receive a lot of questions myself directly.
Um, so thank you everybody for joining. Next week we have got Erin Bell from the Center of Farm Management who is going to be doing a session on record keeping. So be sure to come back for that. If you have any additional questions that come up, feel free to email me and I can get them to the correct channel that they need to go in. But thank you for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And you are free to go. But if you have additional questions, please feel free. We'll stick around for a few minutes.